good vibrations.
Welcome to episode 197, edging ever closer to 200. And I've got some special things lined up to mark the 200th show and the 10th anniversary of this series. I've been doing this shit for 10 years. Can you believe? I've got a previous guest back on for this show. I last spoke to him a few weeks ago. It's David Clews of Unity News Network and No More Lockdowns. Welcome back on, mate.
Mark, thanks for having me, and delighted to be a filler until you get to 200 and get the decent guests on.
Well, yeah, I do have a couple of surprises for 200. It will be interesting.
Okay, I'm only joking. I'm only winding you up, don't you worry.
I know. So you've been pretty busy since we last spoke.
No, it's just this insanity we're living in, Mark. So we've just got to keep trying to get the message out of normality to the people, and it's, you know, we have a wee small microphone, whereas the BBC, everyone is like, you know, in that Mad Max Fury Road, they've got that big huge sound system. That's what the BBC and the MSM have.
Yeah. How do you feel about everything you obviously consider yourself compelled to do? Probably the same way as me. Do you undertake it all graciously and good-naturedly, or is there any hint of kind of grudging resentment that this is what your life has come to? As I take it, all the stuff you're doing now is not something you ever planned to do in previous years, but you just feel the responsibility to be doing it with your life and time right now. Do you begrudge all this in any way, or do you just undertake it, you know, good-naturedly?
It's a really good question, because when we set up, my colleague Carol Pearson and I set up UNN, I actually was sort of through with activism. You know, with UNN, it was an alternative media site, and we just wanted to provide an alternative. But, you know, with everything that's going on, I just felt we had the audience, and you know, I've been in politics for a number of years, and you know, you just couldn't sit back and not say anything. And I mean, I love it. I love campaigning now and doing it, but it's not pleasant. I didn't want to have to do this, a bit like yourself. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to have to be in this position. Yeah.
Well, I often bring to mind an anecdote that was related by Mark Passio of whatonearthishappening.com. You know, a while back, he was talking about the obligation that he feels to creation to teach natural law and streetwise spirituality, which he's been doing for many, many years. And he's been very honest and open about it. And he said that he wishes he didn't have to do this with his life. There's so many other things he would prefer to be doing with his time, but in all good conscience, he can't do those things because he feels this pressing commitment to do the work that needs doing out there. And I feel the same way, just being honest and candid about it. I wish I didn't have to do all that I'm doing, but for as long as the world is in the state that it's in, I can't just sit back and enjoy myself and listen to music and go to movies and stuff like that when there's so much more I could be doing with my time. So that's how he feels about it, and that's how I feel about it. And I wonder if that's how you feel about it.
My personality, I quite like winding up authority. It's always been my thing, you know, and the establishment. And I hate these people with an absolute passion. I loathe them. I loathe the mainstream media. I loathe the political class. So anything that we can do to annoy them, frustrate them, and eventually bring them down brings me great delight. And again, I know this is me being fully candid. Part of what offends me so much about this is it's an insult to my intelligence. The regime, the government, and the media are treating me like I'm an idiot, and I can't see through their scam, and I'm not prepared to just sit back and go along with it. You know, that's really what annoys me is we know they're lying, we know what they're up to, so I'm not just going to go along with it like a good boy just to you know, and so I can go away to Dubai for a weekend and drive a Range Rover. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm very much the same way.
That's the problem is so many people who are in positions of authority, positions of power, they know exactly what is happening. They know it, but they just choose to walk past. It's a bit like, you know, from a biblical reference, the Good Samaritan story. You know, all the people that should be helping the person by the roadside, they just walk past. They're too busy. They've got too busy a life. They don't want to look. They just turn the other way.
Yeah. You got a bit of a punk rocker spirit there, David.
Well, yeah, and again, look at. I mean, I was. It's interesting because when I was growing up, I was always a real Tory boy, pro monarchy, pro. I mean, I'm still very socially conservative, but I was always very conservative. I had huge respect for authority, the police, the monarchy, all the institutions, and it's that I have a real sense of betrayal for what these people have done and the way they have ruined and destroyed this country. And what really frustrates me the most is all the supposed radicals, all the supposed punk rockers that used to be against the establishment, they've all just gone along with it.
Exactly. Where is that spirit now? Where are the punk rockers? Where are the acid house ravers from back in the day? Where's all the bloody football hooligans and the activists? Not that I endorse that, but what happened to all of that? There used to be this spirit of rebellion. There was the miners' strikes. There was the poll tax riots. What happened to all of that? Where's it all gone?
You could probably talk for days on this. I think if you look at the way the sort of emasculation of men has been a big aspect of that, and we are now a very feminized society. And if you think back to the sort of the miners' strikes or the poll tax, men did hard jobs and they worked together. So there was big factories, there was pits. Whereas so you could almost say we're all sort of Thatcher's children now. There has been that move away from solidarity with other people. So I think that plays a big aspect. And the other reason as well, Mark, is people are leveraged up to the hill. Most people, if they lost their job, they couldn't afford their car, they couldn't afford their house. People have never been in as much debt, and they know that. They're a slave to the system.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So you've had many campaigns on the go in recent times, but let's start by focusing on what many would consider to be the most pressing and the most urgent, which is the ongoing V agenda, which is being pressed forward evangelically at a desperate rate. That makes it feel like it's some kind of race against time on the control system's part. They're getting absolutely zealous about this, and particularly the proposed Ving of 12 to 15-year-olds within schools. And it's been very difficult to keep track of what's going on here because there's been mixed messages in the mainstream media. One minute we hear that the JCVI has advised the government to not press ahead with the Ving of 12 to 15-year-olds, and that may well be in response to public kickback, I feel. I'll get your views on that. But then you hear that Boris Johnson and his cabinet have apparently rejected that advice, and they're planning to go ahead with it anyway. It's interesting that they never seem to reject the advice of Sage. They do everything Sage says, but when it comes to this, they're prepared to say, no, actually, we're not going to take your advice. We're just going to do what we want anyway. So this is something that you've been focusing your efforts on majorly in recent times, isn't it?
I really think this is the number one issue just now, and as well the wider societal impact of it, that you as a parent are no longer responsible for your child. The state is responsible for your child. And again, this is from a conservative government that is supposedly about individual liberty and family values. Like if this had been a left-wing Labour government doing it, you'd have been like, right, okay, fair enough. But it's shocking. With the JCVI decision, I refer to that as being a glitch in the matrix, because this was the first time that there really had been any pushback. Because what they had said a few weeks ago was it will be rolled out to 12 to 15-year-olds through Gillick competence, which means the child can make the decision. Then, there, as you pointed out, there was a big pushback. They would have seen that. They would have known that. And then the JCVI came out and said no to that. And now, obviously, the decision is going to be taken by the chief medical officers, which is Whitty, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland one. I don't know their names. And I mean, Whitty is just a stooge of it all. And the most important thing, and this is the argument I try and make to sort of normies, is even if you believe the narrative, even if you believe everything the government is telling you, there is still no reason to do this to anyone under the age of 18. I mean, there's no reason to do it to people, you could argue, under the age of 70, but very much under the age of 18. that it is wholly without merit. And that's not knowing what we all know about everything else that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hoping for a long time that this issue will turn out to be that line in the sand that we've needed for so long, because so many other things that I thought would be a line in the sand have proven not to be. They're even talking about passports now to get on flights and go into nightclubs and things like that. And I would have thought that would have caused absolute public outrage. So far, it doesn't seem to have done. Maybe it will when, the reality really dawns on people in terms of how many of their rights have been taken away. But the enforced viewing of children has to be that line in the sand. And I think it's showing itself to hopefully be that now.
It is. And what's even been quite pleasing is some of the more mainstream voices in the sort of anti-lockdown movement have even said the same. So your Richard Tice's, your Lawrence Fox, your talk radio hosts, they even realise this. So it is encouraging in a way. And I've been talking to a lot of people recently, Mark, people who have been supporting the campaign and have been phoning round them. And one thing we all agree on is there hasn't been enough pain felt yet amongst the public. Now, I know in your industry, and I know a lot of people, we know people have really struggled, but for the vast majority of people, furlough, the very generous loan schemes brought in for businesses, house prices at record highs, the stock market at record highs, your influencers in society, they haven't felt any pain yet. They've loved the last year and a half. They've loved lockdowns, but again, this move towards state mandating of what to do with children is a very dangerous road to be going down.
Yeah, it's got to hit close to home, hasn't it, for people to be stirred into action?
It does. And as I said, that if you think back to, I remember last March when all this happened, my thinking was house prices will collapse, the jobs market will collapse, there'll be massive turmoil. What they've done is they've stuck the biggest sticky plaster over this possible. They've pumped the markets full of liquidity. They've pumped it full of printed money via the Bank of England and borrowing. And it's this surreal situation we now find ourselves in. And that's why things just aren't changing as quickly as we would like them to.
The shit show just drags on and on.
It does. It really, really does.
Yeah, I mean, God, it's only been 18 months, but it feels like I can barely remember what life was like before this madness now.
Well, but again, though, I think that we've had a summer and the weather's been okay where I am, and people have been out, they're going to restaurants. So there is that feeling amongst a lot of people that life isn't perfect, but it's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I've noticed recently is, I think it's slightly different in Scotland, but in England, things have been pretty much back to 2019 style normality.
Yes.
I was in a supermarket earlier today and there were more people unmasked than masked. Yes. People are getting tired of wearing the mask. They're just not bothering anymore because you don't have to, by official rulings. Mm-hmm. And the restaurants are open, the pubs are open, there have been music events going on, and this summer has been relatively normal. So I think if these demons attempt to go for another full lockdown this autumn or winter, they're going to meet some resistance, and people they're not going to be as compliant as they were this time last year and as willing to do all that again, because we've had a little taste of normality and freedom back, and people have realized how much they've missed it, and they're going to struggle if they attempt to do that again this winter, I feel. I
agree. I think this is the illusion of freedom, and likewise with the rollout to kids as well. When the reality of it dawns for most people, and I noticed this even as well within our sort of wider movement, Mark, a lot of people getting very, very frustrated. And look, I understand the frustrations, but this might take quite a long time. It will end and we will win. How and when, I can't answer that question. So it's frustrating, but sometimes these things run. And if you look at movements, the Soviet Union, you could argue, was a totalitarian regime. It lasted 80 years before it collapsed. 70 years, sorry, before it collapsed. And then like East Germany, all these other countries, 40, 50 years. And people who were, whilst as dissidents, we have had a hard time, getting removed off social media, getting attacked. We still haven't been thrown in gulags yet. We still haven't been beaten senseless. I know a lot of protesters have out on the streets, so that has. But on the whole, as dissidents, we even haven't felt the pain that dissidents in those regimes felt.
Yeah, good point. I think it's very different to those regimes, though. I take the point entirely that you're making, but the difference here is that this one is affecting everyone, whereas previous situations affected people of certain nations. This pain is being felt by everyone. So the scale of it is absolutely massive. And there's so many more dissidents now than there have been in previous movements because there's so many of us out there. And I think they're going to be a bit more reticent to treat all of us quite in the way that previous regimes have, because there's the potential for some very large pushback.
There is. And as I said, the biggest issue, though, but if you even look at Solidarity in Poland, which was the anti-communist movement, that was very much made up of intellectuals, university professors, senior managers in corporations. Unfortunately, as a movement, this is what really gets me, is the medical class, the political class, the establishment class, they've gone along with it. There's nobody speaking out of in positions of authority, and we need that, but we're not getting them. And as I said, I think it is a mixture of, I think it's fear, and also that we'll just keep our heads down and hopefully it'll fly over it'll fly away from us. But these people can't keep getting away with that for much longer.
That's right. I'm sure a lot of people have been keeping their heads down thinking, won't be much longer, don't want to rock the boat, don't want to do any harm to my career by speaking out. I'll just ride it out. And within 6 months, I'm sure everything will be back to normal. And it's slowly dawning on so many of them that it's not going to get back to normal for as long as we all just sit back and take it. And so there have been a few more voices coming out. I've noticed it from the DJ community and very slightly in the music community. A few more people are starting to find their balls and backbone and start to speak out. And that's only going to continue the longer this goes on.
Yeah, and that, obviously you've got your Eric Clapton, Van Morrison, Right Said Fred. These guys have been brilliant. Yourself, Danny Rampling's been excellent. And I'm sure there's Alan Miller as well, who's doing a good job at it together. So, and Adam Brooks as well, he's another good lad. So there are good people out there, but unfortunately I can name them all on one or two hands. We should be in a position where there's hundreds of them, and they should be screaming it from the rooftops. But it's the fear and the of what might happen to them, and it's a strange phenomenon. And I think as well with modern society, that fear that your friends will think you're crazy or the lost, that guides a lot of people, because we live in that peer pressure thing that, oh my goodness, my friends will think I'm a crazed anti-Veer or something like that. So they couldn't have got away with this 20 years ago. They couldn't have done it 20 years ago. They wouldn't have got away with it.
That's right. I've been saying that consistently in my shows for the past year. They would not have got away with this in previous decades. They've softened up the population. As you said, they've emasculated the males to a very large extent. And a lot of social engineering has taken place in preparation for this, which shows that this was known to be coming. This was known to be coming decades ago. It's even in the control system's own writings. So this is the culmination of a lot of planning and preparation on their part.
Yeah, 100%. It really is. And we saw the doctor in New South Wales, and she was talking about test and trace leading to the new world order, and
it just slipped out, didn't it?
It did. But that's the second doctor that's done that. And you look at Australia though, Mark. We think we've got it bad. Look at what they've done in Australia. Look at what they're doing in New Zealand. I know. These countries are horrendous.
Yeah, it's terrible out there. I want to get onto that, actually. But you've been running an email campaign this week, urging people to contact government ministers, doctors, head teachers, and any other kinds of professionals intrinsically linked to the V campaign. You've even mentioned janitors that open the gates at schools, allowing the V agenda to take place. Effectively putting these people on notice in a personal capacity and officially advising them of the dangers that have been identified with these experimental gene-altering products, which are not even Vs in the traditional sense. So I love this, because in the same way that these sick freaks like to tell us what they are doing to us in the form of predictive programming, you know, all these coded references in popular culture, movies and music videos and stuff. This has been a major part of my work over the years, identifying how this takes place. They like to announce to us what they want to do because they feel they've then given us notice, and we can't make any legitimate claim that we weren't told. So here, they've had the tables turned on them, so they can no longer make the claim that they weren't given an opportunity to know. They can no longer plead ignorance of these facts. And you shared a reply from Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. It was a very long reply, which made him sound like a robotic talking press release. And it was official government rhetoric and bullshit all the way. So he sealed his own fate with that reply. Were you disappointed by that, or was it entirely what you would have expected?
No, and what's actually been good about this is everybody that has been sending out letters and emails, everyone's getting a response. And it was deliberately hard hitting. So the fact that they've responded means that they've received that. So, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but in a court of law, if we've told them, if you do this, you'll be breaking the law, and they've acknowledged that they've received that, they're basically perjuring themselves that we've told them. So we've also, and again, you mentioned about the janitors, and I know that's quite hard hitting, quite blunt, but I've had a lot of people get in touch with me who do work in schools, and they say that they are scared now after seeing that letter, and they're worried. And I said, what you need to do is you need to get in touch with your headmaster. You need to get in touch with to voice your concerns. I said, because you have a duty to do that. Now, I'm sure that'll keep you safe. Now, look, letting the cat out the bag, I don't see us taking janitors or cleaners to court over this. But these people need to know that they're aiding and abetting a crime here, and they need to at least make their superiors aware of what is going on. And fundamentally, if bad things do start happening, which we think they will, then you know that it is murder. It is a crime. And if the police and the authorities don't arrest these people, then there is provision in the law that the wider public can go and arrest these people. And obviously that's a conversation for a different day, but that's the provisions there within the Criminal Justice Act.
Yeah. Well, your mail out makes a reference to future criminal trials. Yes. And I kind of lit up when I read that. So realistically, you feel that these could be coming?
They will, and they have to. And everyone that's been involved in this has to be held accountable. The problem is we're not in charge, but I do believe there will be trials for what is being done by these people, because they've broken all sorts of codes of ethics. Like, even if you don't go down as far the rabbit hole as we all are, purely from the way they've gone about their business, the coercion, the propaganda, the state lies, it's criminal what they have done. They can't get away with this. And as part of the wider V rollout as well, I mean, we know about the issues with that, but it's all being deliberately suppressed. The truth is being suppressed. I don't know if you've seen as well, Mark, we've got the very successful Yellow Board campaign out.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
The UK. So, you know, that started in New Zealand, and then Rhoda, a great girl from the Great Reopening, said, well, look, why don't we do it? So one of our supporters came forward as a printer. So we printed, well, people have contributed towards it. There's about 100, we've done about 100 sets across the UK. I'd say there's at least another 200. So there's like 300 or 400 groups across the UK right now with the big yellow boards. And that's just, it's a brilliant campaign as well. And it's so organic, which is wonderful.
I read through Dominic Raab's reply there, and it's just full of rhetoric and bullshit. And it just makes me wonder, when you get replies like that, and when these people just stick to the official line and they don't deviate from it one iota, is this down to them just being bought and paid for by the banksters, and they know which side their bread is buttered and how high the price would be if they strayed from the official line? Or are they compromised or blackmailed into compliance in some way? Is there some kind of video that they don't want to get out there and they have this hung over their heads the whole time to just stick to the agenda? Or do you think it's even possible that people like Raab actually believe their own bullshit? Or do you think it's probably a combination of all those things when you take into account?
If you actually read it as well, the way I thought it read was, by the way, this is the responsibility of the MHRA and the GCVI. So even within it, they're kind of still covering their own backsides. So they're still delegating responsibility over. I think with these people, you're dealing with psychos. So like, if someone said to me, you're committing a crime, I'd be like, all right, okay, well, how? Or all right, okay, blah blah. These people are psychos. They are lizard people. They have no empathy. They're robotic. They're not human beings. So and this is the thing that really gets me, is they're not even that good they're not even that capable. Like, Dominic Raab's an empty shirt. Like, he's got the personality of a door frame, and that's insulting to many of the interesting door frames around the UK. He's just a nothing, an empty shell. The whole political class. Name me one person that stands up in Parliament and you think, yeah, that guy's actually a really good speaker. They're passionate. None of. Can you name any?
Well, there was Desmond Swayne and Charles Walker that showed some potential a few months ago. But I think Desmond Swayne then went on to endorse the V, as I recall. So that's not many names, really, is it?
No. Where's Charles Walker gone? Is he being cloned, or is he is it like a Clockwork Orange? Is he like sitting in a room with his eyes opened up watching the BBC?
He's a bit quiet lately, isn't he?
He is. And Steve Baker as well. I mean, we should have nothing but contempt and disgust for these people. Like, they treated us like subhumans. We should treat them the same. So they drag, when you think about it. Yeah, but like here's the thing as well about what we do, Mark, and you do a brilliant job in your show, and there's so many people. At least we entertain people. At least we talk with people and engage with them and have a bit of banter. What do they do? What do they provide?
I mean, what's going through the mind of somebody like Dominic Raab when he's been sent a very challenging, very confrontational letter accusing him of criminal conduct and warning him against proceeding further with it, and all he can do is send out some bullshit press release just reinforcing the official government narrative? Does he think that's going to placate the person that sent the letter, and they're going to receive that and go, oh, well, fair enough, yeah, okay, I'll take that on board and I'll cease and desist now. That's as far as I'm going to take things.
It is like a ruling regime now. It would be the equivalent of, trying to lobby Colonel Gaddafi or someone. They just think they're untouchable. Because it's like, look at Cressida Dick. She's going to get a 2-year contract renewed as the head of the Met Police. Even if you're a left winger, a right winger, a centrist, she's the worst Met Police head in history. They just. I mean, it's. I think they just think they can get away with it because the system is so corrupt. By nature. The system is so corrupt. This two-party system, one-party dictatorship, and a state media, it's a corrupt system, and they know they can get away with their corruption.
What do you make of Hancock being shuffled aside outside of the public eye, supposedly resulting from his extramarital affair? Do you feel he was becoming too much of a liability for the government, bit of an embarrassment, and they felt he needed to be removed? I mean, it's not as if replacing him would have done any damage to the agenda, because Sajid Javid is also an affiliate of Klaus Schwab and the WEF, and he's been in attendance at Davos, so it's business as usual there. But why do you think Hancock was pushed out of the public frame?
I think it was interesting as well. I mean, obviously he made his statements on the V and who it was for. So that there's an argument that he was unequivocal about that, and that if he was still in position to then do it, it might have been an issue. I'm not sure about the whole Matt Hancock stuff, to be honest with you. It was all a bit odd, that sort of camera or whatever. And I mean, I think just in these situations, just sometimes you need a bit of new blood, a new fall guy. So he did his year and a bit. He'll be looked after. All his PPE contracts to all his mates, he'll be getting bunged left, right, and centre. So maybe it's just a case of he did his stint, and it was and to get the scent away from the attack dogs, just get someone else in place.
Yeah.
And the same will happen with Johnson. Once Johnson served his purpose, the puppet masters above will just get someone else in.
There were pictures of Hancock in the newspapers on holiday in Cornwall recently, surfboarding and stuff. And I thought a while back that the day is going to come where the likes of Matt Hancock are not going to be able to walk the streets, and they're not going to be able to go on a public beach because they're just going to be mobbed by angry groups. We're not there yet, but
No.
I like to think that day will still come where the Dominic Raabs of this world and the Chris Whitters of this world and the Patrick Valences will not be able to walk the public streets, because the reality of what they've been involved with will have dawned on the general public by that point.
Yeah, and look at the way Justin Trudeau is being treated out in the streets. That's how these people. That's how it should be. I'm not a violent person. It's not really in my DNA. So I think what these people should be subjected to is constant public mockery. They should be harangued. They should be shouted at and outed, mocked, exposed. That as you say, they shouldn't be able to show their face in polite society for what they've done. I think that's well, I think they should all be in jail for the rest of their life as well. But at least in the meantime, they shouldn't be allowed to show their faces in public for what they've done. Yeah.
Well, life in jail would be a good start. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, they've treated us with nothing but contempt. We should show them the same.
And I often try to imagine the outrage that I hope would be there as and when the truth about C being a monumental scam orchestrated in collusion with Big Pharma to push the Vs and to genocide large sections of the population. And the only thing that's standing in the way of that truth getting out there is the brainwashing, propaganda pushing mainstream media. It's the last line of defense. And if and when that ever goes, then this torrent, this tsunami of truth is going to sweep over the masses. And there's going to be a lot of dark nights of the soul to be dealt with when the penny drops about these terrible things that have been done to us for so long. So the agenda stands to be fully exposed if and when we can find a way of just exposing the lies of the mainstream media or bringing them down.
It's a bit like the Running Man, Mark. Remember, they take over the broadcast network and reveal the truth.
Yeah, it's like the end of They Live as well.
Yeah, and that's it's well what they've done, the way the censorship on. If we'd still had free access to social media that we had even 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been a completely different story. But they knew that social media was their weak point. That's why they worked in tandem with all the big tech companies to suppress alternative information. And all of the sort of pivotal people speaking out from the start were all deplatformed. Yeah, I mean, look at it. The BBC, ITV, Sky. Imagine you only had 3 restaurants in the whole of Britain you could choose from. No one would stand for that. But you're only allowed to consume media from like 3 TV stations, and then you've got GB News, which is okay. I mean, Neil Oliver is brilliant, and he's a real shining beacon. But on the whole, again, it's just another sort of controlled op, establishment safety valve for people to voice their anger.
I'm just going to retell an anecdote that I've related on a previous broadcast, but I think it bears repeating here because it helps to make the point. I had a DJ mate many years ago, and one of his family members sadly had contracted cancer. and he'd written about it on his Facebook page. And a few people in the chat thread were saying, oh, there are alternative cures for cancer, mate. If she's just undergoing chemo and radiotherapy, you might want to look into some of these natural holistic cures. And they were listing some of these things that can be used to treat cancer that you don't get told about by your GP. And this DJ mate of mine made the comment that if this is true, and if it's been actually killing her and making her worse, and all along there were natural cures that I wasn't being told about, I'm going to be fucking furious. And I like to think that mindset, that response is going to be there on a public-wide basis as and when the masses finally twig that we've all been lied to and deceived in the worst possible way. I like to think that his response would be indicative of a worldwide response.
Well, if you want a good example would be the Iraq War. Whereas in 2003 it was WMD. Everybody now knows that was a complete lie. And you look at Tony Blair. The only place Blair's still allowed to operate is on the MSM. Blair is universally loathed. He is despised amongst the people. So, but again, that it obviously didn't result in enough fury to see him go to jail. But no, I think your point is accurate. And look, there's going to come a point where you won't even need doctors. AI or robots could do a doctor's job, because all a doctor does now is, what symptoms do you have? All right, this is what the pharma company tells me I should this is what I tell you. Society's very strange now. It really, really is. I think as well, there's an element in Britain of the class system where, that person with the posh voice told me, so maybe they were right. I still think the class system plays a big impact in this country.
Yeah. But the irony of that is you often get far more truth from a lorry driver that lives on a council estate than you do from a public school educated journalist.
Correct. And I mean, when you look at that, you've got Whitty and Valens there, and they speak with the plummy voices, and it's professor and it's sir. The sort of immediate reaction of most people is to acquiesce to that and to think, well, they're in that position for a reason. And the truth is, I've met loads of people who are chief executives of companies, senior positions, and they're as thick as mints. Just because you're in a successful position in a company doesn't mean you're good at your job. A lot of the time it means you're good at pushing an agenda or following a script.
You mentioned earlier Australia and what's going on there, just how deeply entrenched the tyranny has been out there. And New Zealand is not a whole lot better. And they're just emerging from their winter out there as we're about to go into ours. Do you feel what's been going on there is in store for the rest of us if we don't do something about it and stop this madness in its tracks ourselves? Or do you feel those are very extreme examples and there's something about those nations where the people have just acquiesced so much to have allowed this situation to take root?
Well, you saw the scenes in Newcastle a couple of weeks ago where the police set attack dogs on non-violent them. Look, Mark, I've been to these demonstrations. I know the people at them. There's a lot of women at these, and most of the time they're pretty peaceful. People have anger and they want to go out and vent it. The police went along there that day with dogs barking at people and horses. The police there were an absolute disgrace. This is why I'm really encouraging everybody to try and come out on the 25th in Newcastle, because we need numerical superiority that day to show that we will stand with the people in Newcastle. I'm going to be there, and that we can't take it. I'm still hopeful that we won't get to a position like that, but you can't rule it out, because that's the direction of travel. I still think, though, here, and I think the government knows that, we still do have a bit of a rebellious nature, and I think they do know they can't push us that hard. I'm still hopeful we will avoid the worst excesses of that, but you can't rule it out.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that if they are planning to get really harsh with another lockdown, and they would have been positioning for it by now, preparing people subliminally for it by drip feeding this idea into the mainstream press that the cases are out of control and there's a new variant on the way and all this. And I've not been seeing that. So it leads me to suspect or possibly hope that they're not going to go down that direction. But as you say, you can't rule it out. And I've heard it said by a lot of people that of the Australian people, they've traditionally had this very laid back sort of carefree nature. They've just enjoyed living freely and doing what they want to do. And they've not really experienced any great tyranny up to this point. And so this has been a real shock to them that they didn't see coming. And it's not necessarily in their nature as a people to rise up and fight back. They're finding now that they have to, but it's not something that's been bred into them in the same way it may have been bred into Europeans, for example, or even Americans.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I was speaking with a lady the other day from Ghana, and she said that, look, well, this was a coup, this was a takeover. People would have known that. It's not really in our DNA. As I said, we are a high trust country. We were traditionally brought up with respecting the positions, respecting the organisations. So so to these places, the trust levels will be even less. So it will have to be learned behaviour for them and us to an extent. I think we're just a wee bit further along in that.
So your activities with No More Lockdowns have clearly been reaching a lot of people.
Yep.
What kind of growth have you noticed over the months in terms of people that are paying attention to what you're doing and wanting to come on board? Has there been a steady sort of exponential growth, or has there been a huge influx of interest at certain points?
The point I always stress, a lot of people as well say we need sort of a one united movement against this. I take a different view in the sense that sometimes having decentralised guerrilla type campaigns are better because they're actually harder to shut down. So look, there's so many people out there doing so many brilliant jobs, and we, as I said, we focus very much on the V for kids and the rest of that. So we've got loads of support, and people have been very, very generous. We're also going to be working with Anna de Buisery, other lawyers, Simone Plot as well on the legal and health and safety side. So yeah, I mean, all the direction of travel is towards us. And again, don't mean to sound like a hero or anything, but I don't want any plaudits for any of this. I'm just doing it because I think it's the right thing to do. And I've got the experience of politics. I've got the experience of how to communicate a message. So I'm just going to keep doing my thing along with my team. And as I said, there's so many other people out there doing brilliant and so many different protests. There's people like Jeff Wyatt and the Milton Keynes, Neil McRae in London, and Kate Shemirani as well down in East Sussex and other places, and Piers Corbyn as well from the start. We are a very wide, very eclectic movement, so everybody is doing their bit, and I think if everybody just keeps doing their bit, we will eventually reach that tipping point. The problem is I just can't tell people when that's going to be, but it will come.
I feel so as well.
And yourself, Mark, of course, and everyone else on social media and you've been told the rallies, Gareth Icke as well. You know, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things, and that's where it really, really is. And I say this to everybody: is at the end of every night, as long as you can think, well, I did my best today. I did all that I could. You know, I'm not asking everyone to be like a Buddhist monk in Vietnam and go out and pour petrol over themselves and set themselves alight. You know, I would say I don't want anyone to go to jail, and I don't want anyone to lose their jobs. I want to win this as cleanly and easily as possible.
So what further campaigns or upcoming events have you got that you'd like to mention to people?
I'll be down in Darlington this Saturday, 2 p.m, just behind the town hall. I'm going to be joined by Dr. Kevin Corbett, Simone Plot, and others. We're going to be doing a rally there. And then on the 18th, there's one up in Aberdeen, and then Newcastle is going to be on the 25th. So what I've been doing and where I've been located is I was up in Inverness a couple of weeks ago, is try and go to the more geographically. I did one in Cardiff as well, just around the UK. I mean, I think London is where the point of action needs to be. And I think come the autumn, and everyone said this, look, if they try another lockdown in autumn, we need to mobilise serious numbers outside Parliament. If they try and do that, then is the time to mobilise the numbers there. So we just
on a
need to keep
weekday as well,
building.
not on a Saturday.
On a weekday,
on a weekday,
100%. On a weekday, 100%. And that's when we really need to get the numbers out outside Parliament, I think.
You're like a freaking rock star on tour, man, with all these gigs.
No, I don't get the groupies. That's the only problem, Mark. I mean, I love my 65-year-old grannies giving me kisses, but it's not like Take That or anyone else when you're out there, I'm afraid. Not like your rock and roll lifestyle.
No, I spent 20 years on the DJ circuit trying to get groupies, and it never happened. Then I got married, and then the offers started. It's very, very unfair.
I know. No, it's do you know what? I love getting out. It's funny because, you know, we get a lot of people on our show and they comment, and it's great to actually meet people in flesh. And when you actually go to these events and meet people, you realise we're just normal people voicing concerns. And let's just say we are all loonies. Let's just say we do have this all wrong. So what? That's my right to think however the hell I want. It's your right to think however the hell you want. The BBC can't tell you what to think. So bugger these people. We can think and do whatever we want as long as it's do no harm.
That's right. Golden rule. If there's no injured party, there's no problem.
Correct. And that's the fun. I mean, that's the thing is as well is it's just that the cheek of these people. You can't think that's dangerous misinformation. You could be costing like bugger off. You know, get lost. It's like these hall monitors are someone who didn't get to be a prefect at school now getting their chance to lord it over us. Yeah, monitoring the door at Lidl and loving every moment. I know. And the thing is, it's like not everyone's like that because, you know, I don't like giving people on low-paid jobs a hard time. I don't agree with that. But you know, most places you go in, most people just they don't bother. It's just you give somebody a bit of power though, and again, it just shows you how sort of like totalitarian regimes can develop, because there are some people out there that just love lording it over people and telling them how to live their lives. I mean, it's a weird phenomenon.
Yeah, we're seeing so much of that now. So what are some ways in which people listening to this can get involved with your various activities? If they're sitting there thinking, I want to do something, but I don't know what sort of things can they get involved with?
Well, there's so many brilliant activities. There's the Rebels on Roundabouts group that is brilliant on Telegram. I think the first thing I'd say to people is get onto alternative media sites for social media. Gab, Telegram are two of your best ones. Rebels on Roundabouts do a brilliant job. They're out there on the streets. Stand in the Park is also brilliant, good for morale boosting. If people want to sign up to support us, it's nomorelelockdowns.uk/support. I'll send them emails out of all the events that we are doing and everything. We're Unity News Network. They can watch the shows. We're also across social media. But as I said, there's so much other good work going on and so many people doing good things. Local campaigning is very, very important, Mark, as well. And whilst the big London events were phenomenal to show the numbers, I think over the last couple of months I've seen a lot more grassroots local things emerge, and that's very, very encouraging. So, you know, I would say to people is do go local, meet with friends and family, and just keep broadening your horizons and support us if you want, and keep up to date with what we do. And if you fancy joining in, please do.
Great. All right, David. Well, happy to be standing out there on the battlefield alongside you, brother, and fighting this one. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Same to you, Mark. You're one of the good guys, and as I say, there's a lot of really good people out there doing a lot of good work. And this is the other thing. Who do you want history to remember you as? Somebody that just took the coin and remained quiet, or do you want to be someone that actually took a stand? And as I say, you don't need to publicly stand with a sandwich board, but even if you do just make a decision that you're not going along with this, you're on our team.
That's right. Who's more likely to be getting talked about 100 years from now? You or I, or Dominic Raab?
Well, exactly. Well, it's
a rhetorical question for the listeners.
I know. I'll be long gone, Mark, by then anyway. So you know, it's as long as I've got a couple of cities named after me. I mean, I'm not vain or anything. A couple of cities, and one of those, you know, that big statue in India, the big statue made of copper. One of them made of gold, 1,000 feet high. I'm not a vain guy. That'll be enough.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah.
and Devlingrad as well. That's what we'll call Bright or somewhere like that.
God, no, please. All right, well, thanks a lot, mate.
Good man, Mark. Pleasure.
This is just for fun.
Vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations, I'm picking up